Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, a podcast for senior living leaders who are looking to stay ahead of the curve in the industry. On this show, we feature leaders and innovators in senior living who are pushing the boundaries and creating new, effective services and solutions. And now, let's settle in as host Jennifer Drago connects us with today's guests.
Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, where we showcase the leaders and innovators in the field who are shaping the future of senior living. I'm your host, Jennifer Drago, strategy consultant and CEO of Peak to Profit. And today, my guest is Sheri Peifer, who's the president of Eskaton. I'm so honored that you are able to join us today, Sheri. Sheri, as I mentioned, is the president of Eskaton. She has been since September of 2022. Eskaton serves over 4,000 older adults each day across a broad spectrum of services and housing offerings. And I'm going to ask Sheri in just a second to tell us a little bit more about that. What I love about meeting Sheri, and we just met a couple of months ago at a leading age conference, is that your career spans over 25 years in the field of aging services, and you've worked in operations, in strategy, which is my love, and I know we're going to talk about that today, as well as leading innovation and growth. You serve as the board chair of the Leading Age California Association, and you love to invest in the development of next generation leaders. That's a passion of yours. And I know I got to see a LinkedIn post recently where I think you started your next Leadership Development Academy at Eskaton. So if you'd like to talk about that, we'd love to hear. You also serve on the advisory board of the gerontology department at the California State Sacramento. And you're a graduate of that program as well, holding a master's of science in gerontology and education. So perfect. And you are married and have 3 teenage boys. So God bless you. I've raised 2 of my own.
Thank you.
So I know how hard it is to be in leadership and manage your family too.
Yes, lots of leadership lessons as we raise our families. That's for sure.
For sure. So tell us a little bit about Eskaton and the organization as it stands today, if you would.
Sure, Jennifer, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this visionary podcast. I feel honored. Eskaton has just celebrated its 55th year of operation, and we have over 30 communities spanning all different types of service lines, from affordable housing to residential living, different types of models with residential living, healthcare services, including skilled nursing and rehabilitation, as well as home-based services and community outreach. And so what's neat about Eskaton and what attracted me to them 18 years ago was truly the opportunity to think creatively and strategically about serving people no matter where they are living. And so that has been an opportunity for us to continue to reinvent ourselves over the years. And we have over 2,000 employees, and we serve about 4,000 older adults every day throughout the span of our services.
That's it. So impressive. And you mentioned you've been with Eskaton for 18 years. And before you became president, you were the chief strategy officer and
Yes.
leading strategy for the organization. So I imagine that you've been a big part of everything that you've just described and pulling that all together and building it.
Yes, it's been quite the ride, as you can imagine. When I started in 2005, we had several years right before the recession, the Great Recession, which lasted 5 years. So learning how to operate in different dynamics through that experience. And then also, obviously, the pandemic and how we're emerging from the pandemic now. So I think as strategists and continuously learning and understanding our market and the needs and the different pivots we need to make along the way is critical for success and sustainability.
Yes. And that's actually how we met. I was at a pre-conference session at Leading Age California, where the session was on organizational sustainability, and you were one of the speakers. And you gave an amazing presentation. The whole session, the whole pre-conference session was wonderful. It was led by Mary Munoz Ziegler, another one of my favorite people in the world. What was the message that day that you hoped senior living providers would hear and that would help them ensure the future viability of their own organizations, but also of our industry?
Excellent question, Jennifer. And I think this is such a critical question that we as nonprofit organizations need to continuously ask with our boards. And the question is really, what's the viability of our different service lines? How are we creating sustainability and ensuring that we are fiscally responsible? Again, with workforce challenges and having to increase our labor costs, it seems as though it's exponentially. We have to understand what the market can bear in terms of serving older adults and what they can afford, and then also balancing that with our labor market and ensuring that we're attracting and retaining excellent employees. But at the governance level, that's the critical place where these questions need to be asked in an honest way and also a curious way, because so often as organizations, we want to protect our mission and we want to believe that perhaps philanthropy might augment operating expenses and be able to help us create sustainability. But at the end of the day, just like a very solid business, for-profit or nonprofit, we need to ensure that we're making margins so that we can cover our expenses and also invest in our capital replacements, and then make some for the rainy days that we have over the years. So
right.
That's part of good, I would say, discipline at the governance level as well as the leadership level.
Yeah, I love all of those messages. And certainly, our margins have been, they're slimmer than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have to be so disciplined to ask ourselves those hard questions so that we can have the capital to invest in new development, new opportunities, because this market that we're serving is growing. As we know, we're going to talk about that as well in just a minute, but also to be able to save for the rainy days, because COVID gave us a lot of rainy days, and I know we're hoping that they don't come back anytime soon, but we have to be prepared.
Right. And the other piece is, as I've been thinking through strategy in particular and leadership, it's critical that adaptation and innovation be a part of our conversation at the board level and the leadership level, especially disruptive innovation. We both know, Jennifer, that sometimes the greatest inventions happen at times like these, when resources are slim and creative entrepreneurs are gearing up to really look at our market and participate. So how can we leverage those relationships and how can we learn together?
So important. So that starting back at that Leading Age conference, I think a theme of the day was being able, just what you said, having honest conversations with your leaders and your board, having the discipline to make the hard decisions when necessary. And I know, having been in this industry for a number of years, that when you are serving with your heart, serving with your mission, that sometimes it's really hard to make business decisions that you may feel affect that mission negatively. But, again, for the future sustainability and strength of the organization, sometimes those decisions are necessary. So I would love it if you could share a little bit more as a leader of an organization about your philosophy as it relates to this discipline of honest conversation, hard decisions, and having the discipline. You can share an example if you have one.
Sure.
And and I'm just kind of curious, beyond your philosophy, how you ensure that these candid conversations happen regularly in your organization.
Yes. So Jennifer, we have pretty specific disciplines here at Eskaton. Again, we're based in Northern California, so our market's very diverse from the Bay Area all the way to the Valley and up to the foothills. One of the things we utilize at a governance level is a cycle called Lifecycle analysis tool. I know we perhaps may get into that a little bit later, but that is one of the tools that we utilize alongside different dashboards that the board can quickly consume and understand the status of the organization. My CEO writes a state of the state, if you will, of each quarter, and some high level information covering, current finances, as well as workforce issues, any expansion opportunities or things that we're looking at strategically, any legal issues, things like that. So at a quick 2-page level, the board can really understand where we're at in a snapshot. We also have a finance dashboard. I complete the planning dashboard, which is really taking our strategic plan and drilling it down into more monitoring elements. It also includes a SWOT analysis that is updated annually at an offsite board retreat. And then we, of course, have our customer metrics. We have satisfaction and NPS scores that are actually real time. So we've been doing that for about 7 years now. We have over 20,000 data points in this robust online dashboard. And so we're able to respond quickly to any issues that customers may have across our business lines. So that's at a high level. Those tools are necessary, I believe, to engender those conversations. And of course, if you have the right people around the table, which I believe we do at Eskaton at the governance level, they're bringing their questions, ensuring that we're looking at all levels of the situation and creating those conversations naturally. And that relationship is critical for success and to navigate. An example that we experienced here at Eskaton, probably over the last 6-9 months, we have 3 standalone skilled nursing communities that are quite large. 2 are 148 bed, 1 is 99 bed. And we've owned and operated them for over 40 years at Eskaton. So they're a close asset of ours. And we realized that through the pandemic, we just were not able to operate them as successfully as, for example, an entity that just does skilled nursing can do. So we made the difficult decision at the governance level to sell those, divest ourselves of those 3 standalone skilled nursing, of which they're going through the AGO approval process right now and look to close in October. So not close the buildings, but to transfer ownership over to a partner.
Yeah. And I imagine how long did that discussion take? And I know you're still not done with it, but how long do you
Yes, from the time the board really made the decision, along with leadership, that we should do an RFP, for example, it was probably, 3 to 6 months to execute. In some ways, I look at that as a strategist. I'm like, well, that took too long. But honestly, it's it's 33% of our top line revenue. So it's a significant part of who we are. And we're looking at that strategically to invest in the future of expansion of our residential and home-based services. So again, having that full perspective of what are we divesting to invest in, it's really a repositioning of the organization, of which, frankly, over 55 years, Eskaton has done many different divestitures and acquisitions and, affiliations. So I think it's just the right time.
Right. And many organizations probably need to be doing a similar analysis. If they're not, I'm sure some are, but I wanted to point out the time frame, because really in the senior living industry, I think that time frame was very short and disciplined, probably because of your leadership. I know as strategists, like you said, we wanted to go even quicker, but I think I'm just going to call it out. I think senior living sometimes thinks and talks and thinks again and thinks more about, these decisions, which are really hard. But again, what we're talking about today is how do we bring more discipline to this process? And I think you had, it sounds like on all levels, the right people around the table, the right metrics in front of you. You had a plan of, we're not just divesting. This isn't shrinking our mission. No, we intend to use this opportunity to, expand our mission, but in a different way. And it seems like it makes so much sense, but I hope that others follow your lead to, have that, go through that decision process in a expedited manner, not a frivolous manner, not without a lot of analysis, of course, but don't wait on the decision.
Yes, and Jennifer, you're absolutely right. Again, having a logical, disciplined conversation around these different assets, using tools like the life cycle, et cetera, do help to guide those conversations. And then also, I think having the right people, again, those with some business experience and acumen, are critical to have around our tables, because that's, again, I'm from back east, and I used to work at a very large life plan CCRC that was faith-based. And I remember in the boardroom, it would be, all mission, nothing else, but we're losing 2 to 3 million a year. So that's not okay. So that's where I believe we can strengthen ourselves if we, again, lead effectively and have the right people around the table.
Yeah. Oh, so impressive. So we talked about you being a chief strategy officer before you became president. I was recently talking to a consultant in our industry, and she works with senior living organizations on development projects. And one of the first questions that she asked going in, and she tells me the story because she knows I'm eating it up, but is, okay, how does this relate to your strategy, to your business strategy? And often what she finds is that they don't have a strategic plan, or if they have one, it's 5 years old, it hasn't been updated. And one of the first things that then this consultant works with them on is, okay, let's get your strategy down so that your development can match your strategy. I know I know Eskaton has a strategic plan, but speaking to other senior leaders, can you share your guidance on the importance of having both a long-term vision of where you're taking the company as well as a strategy? And how often do you work with your board to update Eskaton's strategic plan?
Yes. So, when I joined 18 years ago, we had a 10-year strategic plan, 5-year goals, 2-year initiatives, and it was a big placemat. And we would monitor ourselves with the 10 years. We quickly learned at the governance level, as well as the leadership level, the world is changing much more rapidly than that. And so we then appended that in the late 2000s to really look at a 5-year and then a 2-year. And frankly, that was also too long, Jennifer. So we now have adopted, as of 2015, a 2-year kind of vision. And then we have strategies in place, specific initiatives outlined for the different business lines we have, because each one has its own unique constraints and opportunities. And then so the board leads, really, I say it's a collaborative, because leadership and the board are all working together annually to outline what are the trends, are we responding effectively, what are the key elements we need to be looking at around the corner, disruptive innovations, et cetera. And so there's the educational component, which is critical at the governance level. We believe that there should be an educational component at every single board meeting, because that's, again, we work in a fairly complex environment. Not that other businesses don't either, but with Eskaton, with being in 5 business lines, it's really critical that we're educating ourselves and the board on what's happening and what the future is holding. So at the board level, annually, we have a retreat. We bring in special speakers for that as well. And then as the strategy officer, I was the kind of fit that together in something that's consumable. I'm a person, perhaps like yourself, I appreciate visuals. So the simplicity of visuals, what are the 3 areas we're focused on as an organization? And then, of course, how that resonates within the leadership body, so our executive group that meets quarterly as well. So they are enrolled, their voices are enrolled in the shaping of the initiatives. And then really, as an executive director at many of our properties, they're asking, well, okay, how can I bring this forth in my market, on my campus, enrolling the team members? So that's how we've done it over time. Now, to be honest with you, Jennifer, I think there's one piece that I'd like to include going forward in our next revision, which will be this at the beginning of this next year, which will include much more focus around engaging the voices of our workforce, because workforce has dramatically shifted just expectations and desires of our workforce, especially in healthcare post-pandemic. And so what do we need to do to proactively respond and engage? And frankly, we're in the people business. If we don't have amazing, dedicated, purpose-filled team members, then our mission is not going to be delivered as effectively as our vision requires. So to me, that's a piece where if I have a recommendation to others, please get the voices of our team members around the table to design what that looks like going forward.
Yes. That's amazing. And I think that what great advice. I think about not only the workforce shortages that we have today, but we know as the senior population continues to grow that the caregiver population and the population serving them is much, much smaller in terms of their growth curve. And so to have a great culture and to have a strategic plan that is listening to the voices of your staff, I think is so important. What a great insight. Thank you for sharing that.
Definitely.
And then, so I hear, is it a 2-year plan with a 1-year update cycle?
Yes.
Okay. So you're talking to your board each year about.
Yes, exactly. So we update and tweak our plan annually.
Okay.
And that truly was important for us back in 2015, for example, when following the recession, instead of purchasing land, building and operating our own, we truly opened our arms and said, gosh, Eskaton has an opportunity to support many other nonprofit organizations across Northern California through management, shared services, IT support, and then eventual affiliation, if that would make sense. So we had to learn quickly how to adapt ourselves from a centralized support system to radiate out to other communities and other providers so that we could shore up and strengthen them. And so that cycle is so important because the world, again, technology is shifting constantly, and business processes and expectations. So those dynamics, again, also recognizing that what the market can bear in terms of cost. And so those elements need to be updated annually so that we're on top and ahead of what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying that. And you mentioned a number of dashboards that you use at the board level, which even your planning dashboard, you have a finance, a customer metrics. Are there any I missed? Because I think, that's another part of the strategy execution and the discipline that we have here, right? We don't want to just create a strategic plan and have it sit on a shelf or, to your point, be a placemat that, is somewhere on your desk buried. It has to be a living, breathing document. And I think one of the ways we bring it to life is by having, those things be measurable and bringing the dashboard to the leadership and the board on a regular basis. So what are the dashboards again, if you would remind us?
Yes. So there is, in terms of the dashboards, it's our state of the CEO kind of address every quarter. So he outlines kind of key areas across the organization quarterly. And then also we have the finance. We also have a quality dashboard. I mentioned the strategic planning dashboard and the customer dashboard. And then finally, we always keep the life cycle analysis fresh. And quarterly, we have that in the package as well, so that we're, for example, when the skills were coming through the cycle, and we're impinging on the divestiture side, the decline side of that format. It was time to say, okay, now we want everyone to understand that this is important for us to discuss and decide what do we want to do with this. And historically, when we're entering into new relationships, whether it be joint ventures, affiliations, when I first started with the organization, we had already purchased lots of land and were under construction at 3 different properties at one time. So there was a lot of movement. So that's critical to just keep in front. Again, our board meets quarterly currently. We are evaluating, actually, Jennifer, right now, whether we want to, because of the dynamics of the environment, do we want to meet a little bit more frequently, and or can we even summarize our key performance indicators into more of a high level with those metrics? Because I think it's, again, as a discipline, a business discipline, that's something that's absolutely critical in every business. And so how are we emulating that, not only at the board level with KPIs, but at the management level?
Oh, so impressive. You've mentioned Lifecycles a lot, so I want to go there next. And so we also, as soon as I saw your presentation, I'm a trained Lifecycles capacity consultant. And so I work with nonprofits on all the time. It comes into the board development and the governance work that I'm doing, as well as strategic planning. And I love that you've brought that into your organization. And I want to learn about how you use this, but I have a graphic, and I want to see if it's the same graphic that you use in your,
Sure.
It probably is, but I just thought it might be helpful for those that are watching on video. If
I love this graphic, Jennifer. It has a few more areas than what ours does. For example, we use it from the startup phase
okay.
to the growth, to the maturity, to the decline. I really like, though, that you have the idea, the turnaround and the terminal pieces, because we have turned things around when some of our properties and products have, eclipsed into the decline. We have reinvested, we repositioned or master planned, and we have been able to bring them back into the maturity. So I appreciate how you have this even more fleshed out.
Yes, and I can't take any credit for this. This is from the nonprofit Lifecycles Institute, which
is
that's
great.
Susan Kenny Stevens is the author of this theory, and I'm pretty sure this graphic, but it's one that I use a lot. And then I'm going to take the graphic off, but I wanted to just share that what we're talking about here is, and in your case, I think you do it by business line or by service. You can tell us about that, but evaluating, where we are in our maturity curve, because maturity is really what we're striving for. But we want everything within that service line. So your business model, your administrative systems, your governance, everything to kind of match under that maturity level. And it's when we have mismatches of those that sometimes there can be organizational strife, or we might be heading into decline. And so, tell us about, I'm going to take this down, but tell us about in general how you use this at Eskaton, because I think it's amazing.
Well, what's funny, Jennifer, is I remember when I joined Eskaton, this graph was more of like a solar system. It had like big bubbles and little bubbles. And I was like, what does this mean? And so we have advanced and progressed, matured into the formal kind of life cycle component here. The way Eskaton uses this is truly to evaluate from stepping back, kind of that zoom lens of saying, of course, because we have different business lines, we color code our products and services by, for example, affordable housing. So we have 13 affordable housing. We've got 12 residential living, different products actually within residential living, home-based services. And then, of course, our healthcare services as well. And we've also added now some joint venture, some affiliation. And so what's really helpful in the way the board appreciates using this is looking at how, first of all, where is everyone stationed? And I appreciate that you just said the goal is to keep them in maturity, and the maturity phase can be many decades if you're reinvesting, if you're repositioning.
Right.
That's why I liked how you had the last several pieces. How do you regenerate your products and services? But it also allows the board, again, who come together at 4 or 6 times a year, to quickly assess, start asking questions. Okay, well, why is you don't have much in startup phase, Eskaton? You don't have much in growth phase. That looks like there's nothing there. So what are your plans to expand your relationships? What is your plan to go out and market for some more management services, for example? How are you expanding your or retooling what you currently do to remain in that vital area of maturity? I think I've struggled a little bit with how to, for example, within the scope of what we do in terms of revenue, we've got affordable housing that, individuals can pay $250 a month. And then we've got life plan communities where, they're investing large sums of dollars for many amenity rich services. And the whole scope within, I've been curious about, margin. You mentioned earlier that we've been seeing declining margins. How do you reflect that appropriately on the life cycle to show, this entity is still in maturity, but it's got declining year-over-year margins. And so could there be a second level? Because oftentimes right now that's due to labor costs, because we had to increase our healthcare labor costs by 30% within 6 months. And so, again, healthcare is third-party reimbursed. Those reimbursement rates aren't going up. So again, how are those being navigated and considered over time? So that's one of my questions that I'd love to learn more about, and I'll have to look up that institute and talk to you more about that. But those are the types of things we need to consider as nonprofit organizations for sustainability, and also for creative financing, for example. Do we need to refinance? Do we need to find partners? Do we need to think differently about how we grow and invest in modernizing our communities?
I love it. And so how often did you say quarterly that
Yes.
And is it every single community that you have has its own place on your life cycle chart?
Yes.
Okay. Every service.
So there's 30 boxes.
Okay.
And so at first, when you look at it, the good news is now it's color coded. It's somewhat organized in terms of reviewing what this looks like through a board lens. But again, preempting those questions. And sometimes actually we have created what we call the green sheet, which is a menu of questions, so that we kind of forecast out some questions that the board can even look at. Because sometimes, again, if the board's coming in quarterly or every 6 months, they may not know all the different types of questions. But sometimes we as management are saying, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And so it also helps to kind of preempt some questions so that we can, kind of dig into some difficult things that are uncomfortable. And I think that's actually a healthy place to be.
Yes, I love this. I love how it generates the right conversation at the leadership level, at the board level. And I'm looking at your slide from that session in California that I went to, where you did put your 30 boxes were on the life cycle chart, and the 3 care centers are straddling maturity, moving into decline. And, now it all comes together to, what you've done because of that. So that makes perfect sense.
Exactly. And the good news is, back to the true cycle, is we've had things straddling there historically, and we've been able to reinvest and master plan them back into maturity. And I think that's really a critical component to this. Plus, For example, our home-based services, our non-medical, and we also have licensed home healthcare, but our non-medical was going towards kind of decline because of the caregiver shortage. Then we were able to partner with Honor Home Care out of San Francisco, and they really shored up our caregiver strategy. And so even entering into partnerships can open up doors that we've never considered before.
Yes, and so important for the industry to consider now. I know a lot of the larger organizations are really looking into partnerships and affiliations, as you mentioned, joint ventures, different things, but even smaller single site organizations or smaller multi-site can really benefit from opening these conversations, because sometimes we just can't do it all, nor should we.
Should we? Nor
Right.
should we. And I appreciate that statement so much. We don't have to be all things to all people, even though historically Eskaton pretty much has tried to be all things to all people. And, different economic times, perhaps that's doable. But really, with the competition rising, we have to be that much more proactive and laser focused to compete effectively.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. You mentioned home and community-based services, so let's end in that arena, because I love home and community-based services for lots of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is I think it's going to be the way that our industry, senior living industry, responds to that silver tsunami we've been referencing all podcast here. The growth in the senior community, we know that many of them won't be as resourced as the generations that came before. And we know that even if they were, we don't have enough brick and mortar, nor could we build fast enough to meet their needs. And so home and community based, I think, is really part of our answer to that question. And so I want to learn more about your philosophy around home and community based, what you think is, what you're into now, what you think the opportunities are for the future, both for Eskaton, but for the industry in general.
I also equally love this topic, Jennifer. So we're definitely proponents here. What we know from a business perspective, if you want sustainability, you need to have volume. What we understand is that 9 out of 10 people would prefer to age well in their own homes. With that, what we have seen, at least nationally, are some very progressive models, especially on the East Coast. The life care at home, if you will, the wonderful models that Kendall at Home has done, and Friends Quaker background entities have done. In California, we're a bit constrained in the fact that we are not able to do what we call life care at home yet. We are working at Leading Edge California and with our policymakers on this. But what we are seeing are a couple things. One is, for example, Institute on Aging in San Francisco is truly a pioneer in home and community-based services through care management, care coordination, and non-medical home care. We look at their model. I say his, Tom Briotti is the CEO there. And they have really an interesting compilation of meeting people who are, let's just say, qualify for Medi-Cal or Medicaid, and then they're able to enroll in this care management, care coordination program and receive services that keep them well in place through technology, through care management services. I think that is a model that will continue to expand. We also are very supportive of PACE. One of our joint ventures is with InnovAge PACE. We invested in that entity to bring forth a large center, a 47,000 square foot center in Sacramento. There were 11,000 individuals that qualify for this Medi-Cal Medicare eligible program. Again, those that are at risk of skilled nursing. So PACE, I think, is going to continue to mature. I'd love to see a more private pay, moderate income PACE eligibility come to fruition. And then finally, I always call it that single point of contact. At Eskaton, we have something called Resource Navigator. And so it's a 1-866 Eskaton phone number that goes to this this team that has the opportunity and education to navigate people through the various unique services that they are needing. Many times people haven't planned forward, like we know, so that education is constant. It's our commitment, honestly. We need to, as nonprofits, be out there educating customers and the public about the fragmentation of our systems and how to navigate them effectively. So having someone at the center as a care coordinator, a resource navigator, is critical to help families, to help older adults navigate the nuances of the payment streams and the services. I would love to see more opportunities, again, because of labor shortages. It's not like they're, when people want care in their own home, there's not a lot of people that are out there able to give all that one-on-one support, and it's not affordable.
True.
We're looking at $30 to $40 an hour just in the Sacramento area. In the Bay, it's $40 to $50 an hour. Not many people can afford that for all the services they need. So again, the proliferation of that village to village concept, where you probably have heard of like Avenidas Village and others, networks across the country. How do we mature those to become even more prolific in terms of hubs of support? Because we're going to have to be very creative as we go into the next decade. Not everyone is a digital native, so that we have to consider not only technology, but also people and connected services. So it's a very exciting time. I actually appreciate that there are incredible challenges in this space, but I think by getting those around the table that have different perspectives is going to be the answer.
Yeah, I love some of the models that you've talked about. And here's another area where we're connected and think alike is Life Plan at Home or Life Care at Home. I actually launched a program in Arizona, the only program that exists in Arizona. And I'm such a proponent of that. Now I'm consulting to help other organizations with that. So I'm so excited to hear that California is looking at making that available, because I know it was not available. And it's such an important way to serve that 90% that you referenced of people who don't see themselves moving into a community, and providing first and foremost that care coordination that's going to keep them healthy, independent, and safe at home. And then along with the services that they need to stay that way. And what we found is that when we had our Life Plan at Home program, we offered the ability to move into our community at any time and have a dollar for dollar credit of their entrance fee toward their CCRC, their continuing care retirement community, because people do change their mind. There's lots of things that happen.
100%. I love that, Jennifer.
Yeah, it's such a nice way to complement the continuum of services that we already have. And it's a more moderately priced product also. So it does serve more of a middle market customer. So kudos to you and the other California leaders looking to hopefully make a change there, because I do think we need more of these programs. There's 35 of them across the country. They've been in existence. The oldest one is 30 years old. They're incredibly successful, but we need more of them.
We need more of them. And I'm so eager to have, in California, it's called CCAH, so continuing care at home. And I think the first pilot's going to be in Los Angeles. So we need to get one up here in Northern California, which I would be very excited to do. But again, to your point, those are the types of programs we need to be bringing to market and piloting and testing and right now. The other piece, Jennifer, which I think you would appreciate, is the confluence of who we're serving today. I mean, on our campuses, we have people from age 60 all the way up to 110. So all the dynamics that occur when you have multiple generations living together, what are the amenities, programs, experiences that are very different for the different types of generations we're serving. And actually, I was just meeting with a dear friend who moved into Sun City, Lincoln Hills, which is a 7,000 home active adult community with over 11,000 people living there. And he is in his late 70s. And he said, it's amazing here at this community that just offers social, lots of social connection and amenities. He says, there's six decades of people living here.
Oh my gosh.
And he says, but there's no backbone of like an Eskaton, someone who can help with care coordination, care navigation, home support. And so there's opportunities. We just have to have our ear to the ground and engage in those disruptive conversations.
Yes. Sometimes just get out of the building a bit and
get out and get into the market. Yes.
That's perfect. So, Sheri, can you tell folks how they can connect with you, connect with Eskaton?
Sure. Yes. My email is sheri.peifer@eskaton.org. That's SHERI.PEIFER at eskaton.org. And of course, you can always ping me through LinkedIn. I'm there. Be happy to connect with you at any time. Just send me an email.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes too, so it'll be easy for folks to find you. And I want to thank you today for having this conversation with me today and with our listeners, sharing all your guidance. And you are doing so many wonderful things at Eskaton and leading strategically. So your voice is so important because you've shared so many nuggets today that I think are really going to be helpful for strengthening and providing resiliency to our industry. So thank you so much for your time.
An honor to be with you, Jennifer. And again, I'm a lifelong learner as well. So I appreciate learning what's going on out there in the market and be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm Jennifer Drago. You've been listening to Senior Living Visionaries podcast, where we explore cutting edge ideas and breakthroughs that are shaping the future of the senior living industry. Please subscribe to be notified when a new episode drops. You can do that at seniorlivingvisionaries.com. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we showcase the leaders and innovators in the industry who are pushing the boundaries and setting the stage for the future in senior living and services. Join us next time as we share the bold ideas and breakthroughs of the industry's most forward-thinking leaders here on Senior Living Visionaries.